Okay, so we'll begin our work session and ask Commissioner Jones to lead it off. You're going to present on the RPD and the lead lines.
Yes. Thank you for allowing us to have this opportunity to share our information regarding two very important projects. The first is the Goodman Section Police Section Office update. I have the city engineer, Holly Barrett, along with one of her staff assistants. I believe she's the second in charge at ARC Services, Lillian Forte. I've always mistakenly call her Lillian Bugliosi because when she started as an intern many years ago, that was her name. I had to remember to use her married name, Forte, not Bugliosi. So Holly and Lillian, if you guys can get started, let's proceed.
Great, thank you. Lillian, oh, okay, there, she knows how to do that. Okay.
I'm just going to share my screen here, so bear with me.
Okay, we'll keep this very short as we anticipate. We have a lot to cover today. Just very quickly, this is our project team. We've been working on this for 3 years. It's been a really great process. A lot of great people involved. Labella Associates is the designer on the project, and Lillian was the senior architect who has been at the forefront of this from the very beginning. Next slide. So we want to come right into where we are now. After an extensive design period, we are now at contract documents. We are planning to complete those contract documents in the next couple weeks, and we are planning to publicly advertise this project on May 11th. At that time, we will go through our standard public bid process. We'll open the bids in June with anticipation of having favorable bids, at which time we will then commence to council for construction funding.
And please, at any time you have any questions, please just jump in, and we're willing and able to answer any questions.
You're looking at the July council meeting, right?
We're anticipating August council meeting at this time. Yes.
Okay.
The size of this project is such that we'll probably have quite a few addendums during the bid process. We want to make sure to give every opportunity to have a very competitive and robust bid process, with the idea that we would then award the project in September. Lillian, if you want to go to the next slide.
Sure.
During that time, from May through July, we also will be going to get our permitting and approvals through the City Planning Commission. We'll also be going to City Council for rezoning approval and an official map amendment in June. So there's sort of some things that work together like a jigsaw puzzle to get us to our final goal. Next slide. So I just wanted to quickly highlight all the public meetings that we've had on this. This is in addition to the stakeholder meetings that we've had with smaller groups. We've also had extensive meetings with zoning and many of the different utility companies, and also the design firm that is doing the reconstruction of East Main Street, which will be going on at the same time as the construction of our section office, as we really transform this entire area.
I just want to note that this one corridor, this stretch of Main Street from Goodman to Culver Road, you're going to see almost a $25 million investment in that corridor. Hopefully that's a linchpin to some future developments that's going on there, really changing the streetscape and the actual area with the city investments.
Next slide. So I'm not sure if all of you have seen, but this is our rendering. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Lily, and she can talk about some of the details of how we've designed the site and how we anticipate having it serve both the Neighborhood Service Center and RPD.
Thanks, Holly. This is a view looking northwest. It has The building, as you can see, has a prominent glass corner element. It features the NSC community room on the first floor. And on the second floor, it has a training/community room for RPD use. On either side of that glass element are the public entrances to the offices. The one I'm highlighting here is the Neighborhood Service Center entrance, and on the other side is the RPD entrance. This view also highlights the Laura Street public space that we are creating by closing a section of Laura Street to vehicular traffic. I'm going to go to the next rendering view. This is a view looking east. This is that entrance to the police station that we talked about. You can see how we're coordinating with the East Main Street reconstruction project with a crosswalk and future median. You can see that there's a couple of opportunities on the building for art murals. The building also has, if you can see it up here, a green roof. The city is the recipient of a $1 million WQIP Water Quality Improvement Program grant. It's a CFA grant, so we're very excited about that for green infrastructure. It includes the green roof and also rain gardens, pervious pavement, and planters. This is a site plan, again, showing that section of Laura Street that we're making into a public plaza. It will have bike racks, park benches, tables, and other public amenities. We're including a north-south cycle track and pedestrian walkway to connect to East Main Street. We've coordinated with RGRTA for a new bus shelter and bus stop in front of the building here. The public parking lot that you see here has plenty of handicap parking spaces that will serve the Neighborhood Service Center. They do issue handicap parking permits. The rest of the parking is for patrol vehicles and personal vehicles during shift changes for staff. This hammerhead up here is also for fire apparatus turnaround. It's a requirement.
Lil, just going back to the site plan for 1 minute.
Sure.
I do want to quickly note that the Laura Street element was really key to making sure that we weren't creating a super block and that we were really allowing pedestrian access through the site. We're pretty proud that we came up with that solution.
Agreed, yeah. This is the first floor plan. These are the two. Oops, hold on 1 second, sorry. This is the police public entrance down here on the lower right. This is the Neighborhood Service Center public entrance. They each open up to a waiting room that has a shared connection to the NSC community room and a shared corridor. All of the Neighborhood Service Center operations are located on the first floor, pretty much back in this area right here. And the second half of the first floor is all for RPD operations. A lot of their equipment storage and office function stuff is located on this level. On the second floor, it's all police. You can see a large part of it is for their locker room spaces, offices, roll call room, and that training / community room that is accessible to the public through this public corridor elevator when needed.
Are there showers in there?
There are, yes. They're back. This is one of the locker rooms back here and back here. Yeah.
But I see what looks like toilets, but I don't see what would be the
Sure,
showers.
I think I can zoom in if you just bear with me for a second. This is the main men's locker room right here. And
Uh-huh.
this is a handicap sized shower, and then one next to it, a standard size stall. All
Got
the
it.
boxes are lockers.
Got it.
Okay. That concludes what I have as far as images.
And we have the same number of accommodations on the female side.
So there was we did some estimating as far as how many female police officers and supervisors that RPD currently has, and then did some projections for the future, anticipating that would also increase. So
Right.
it's not quite the same number of lockers, but it is a number that we came up with that we felt comfortable with, that they had room to grow.
Okay.
Any questions? I just want to add this $25 million investment in this corridor, including what we're doing on East Main Street reconstruction and the police section office, represents our commitment to sustainability. As you heard earlier, there's a $1 million green roof, permeable pavement. There's also over $1 million worth of investment in the actual complete streets, on the actual cycle track, the actual pedestrian wayfinding, pedestrian walking path, and everything there just really exemplifies our commitment to sustainability and being green. So this is an example of how we just do this as a normal way of life, being green and sustainable.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. I do have one question. Sorry, I was on mute, but I appreciate your comment. And I also appreciate how much work has been done on this very project for quite a while. It's been talked about for at least my whole 2 years on council. I know that one of the last things we heard specifically from the Beechwood Neighborhood Coalition was some concerns about the design itself. Now, I want to be clear about this, and I know that this is live and on YouTube, and I have no problem with these comments being recorded. There's been a lot of false narratives about this project. I remember when we first talked about it, people were talking about, why are you building a jail on East Main Street? And I want to be very clear. This is a good project for the community. It's going to lead to some really wonderful things, including making our streets more bikeable, walkable, all of those things. However, I do think that some of the concerns about the actual design itself are things that ought to be negotiated, because the neighborhood there are the ones who are going to be living with this thing. And I think there were things as simple as the big eagle statue was a big point of contention. And I just want to know where are we in terms of that negotiation? And it's not just Beechwood, it should be multiple neighborhood associations.
We're working on a compromise for the eagle, and that's going to be unveiled in the very near future. It's going to be less eagle-like, but more of it'll be less prominent. But we have a way of addressing that concern, keeping the commitment that we have to the police department, having the eagle, because the eagle is part of their badge, it's part of their emblem, it's a part of their old precinct houses. And yet, we want to make sure that we hear what the community is asking for and being respectful of their wishes. So we have a compromise in play that's going to not impact the design, but also meet the needs of RPD and meet the needs of the community.
So prior to the actual build itself, will there be an opportunity? And again, I don't want to just single out Beechwood. I don't think that's I don't think it is just Beechwood, but is there a chance for a public review of the design again prior to building?
Well, as public as we can be under these circumstances,
Sure.
we like to share this, and this is the first step of sharing what we're doing here. Yes, we would use these types of opportunities to share what we've completed here. And yes, we heard everything. One area, they wanted to have a playground somewhere there with a play apparatus, and it just didn't mesh. the one great thing that we were able to do here, along with our greening strategy and making sure that we're environmental stewards, we were able to take a brownfield site, an old refiner's gas station, and convert that was on the registry as a Superfund site and turn that around and reutilize that as part of this site. And we have to be, very careful on what we place in there that meets the actual terms and conditions of our consent order and our decrees that come down. So that's where we're at. We have really dot the I's and cross the T's to meet all of the conditions for our compacts with DEC and EPA to make sure that this site is meeting all the conditions that they've established for us. So I think we're in a good place. We do have some public space there. We have bicycle connections there. We are looking at the actual Eagle as an issue. And I think it's going to be something that's going to really highlight and really change that corridor of East Main Street. Instead of having houses that were kind of, not in the best shape, we're going to have something that's an institution that's going to really be anchor or to establish what's going on there. It's going to be complementary to what's going on at RGRTA, what's going on at Warfield Square, and hopefully that will inspire more investment in that corridor.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Good
afternoon, Commissioner Jones.
That building, that design is striking. It says value of a neighborhood. And it says we are committed to improving our neighborhoods. I don't know of any other non-downtown neighborhoods that has that level of investment in a single building.
I'd also like to point out that we, through the multiple public meetings that we've had on this, we have done a lot of modifications to the design. We've added a lot of transparency to the building. We're doing a lot of creative lighting to really create a feeling of safety. The other thing, I think a lot of times the perception of architectural features can vary tremendously based on the internal use. So where the portion sort of slopes out, that's going to be community space in there. You're going to see vibrancy in there. You're going to see light. So in the evening hours, you will see activity of a neighborhood sort. So that was a design element we put in very specifically because we thought we would add to the warmth and safety of feel of the neighborhood.
How does it connect to the, so we saw the East Main and the part that was Laurel Street. How about the back side of it? How does that connect to the neighbors who now are faced with this being in their backyard? Is it just a fence? Is there some sort of transition of green space there for them? Have we talked to the neighbors at that end? How does that transition work for now? People will have this building in their backyard.
There's a Holly, you want to take it, or I could talk to it? I can talk to, I'm saying anything, but Holly, go ahead and talk about our greening, our strategy of making sure that there's an ample amount of green space there so that it does not look like an institutional building, but more of a neighborhood-centric facility that's going to be inviting and encourage people to come and be part of it. Holly?
Yeah, very much so. We've really worked on strategically putting the green spaces that will act as snow storage in the wintertime as also green spaces that buffer the effect on the neighborhood. We're also looking at creative fencing, not chain link fencing and these fencings that create a visual barrier, very soft security measures, nothing very harsh, creative use of planters and things such as that. So I think everyone will be quite pleased.
Is there, first of all, it is very beautiful, and I love the roof concept as well. It's good for the mental aspect for a lot of police officers, but is there also a fitness center inside for the police and for the NSC office?
Absolutely, Councilperson Pale, absolutely. We don't put anything in for RPD, RFD, for our water work folks, anyone who's out there, our essential employees are out there, we need to provide them with ways of exercising, relieving stress. If you take a tour of our waterworks facility on on Felix Street, you'll find that there's an exercise room there. The only place we don't have an exercise room is at City Hall, and I'd like to have one there. So, but but that building was built in the 70s. But when we look at building our facilities now, we look at what the need of the actual employee is, and we have to make sure that we are trying to not only make sure that they're safe, that we have a building that's going to be safe for the employees and the citizens that come in there, but also give them some wellness, and that's part of providing the just the total stewardship for everyone. And yes, simple answer to your question, yes.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Commissioner.
Right.
We still have access to the fitness area at the public safety building
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
for City Hall employees. Yeah.
For City Hall employees, and like I said, I would love to have one at City Hall where I can go and burn off a couple of calories when we go back to City Hall.
Commissioner Jones, I'm very interested in the the less eagle-like sculpture. So looking forward to that.
Okay.
But also wondering if there, kind of what Councilmember Gruber is saying, will there be additional opportunities for the public to kind of shape the open space? I understand, not being able to put a playground there, but is there an opportunity to put playful elements? Just wondering your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm a proponent of playful elements. I think we put the first playful policy in place in the nation or in the state, working with with community health folks, and where it's appropriate, where we can place those elements there, we will. That'll be part of the actual landscaping plan. But we also have to balance, the community need and the fact that it's also going to be a police station, or police section office. So that's going to be a balancing act, and we try to put playful elements everywhere. If we can do it downtown on Broad Street and Court Street, I think we can provide some opportunities for playful elements on East Main Street.
Can you say a little bit more about needing to balance the neighborhood space and the RPD and how that might potentially come into conflict with having playful elements?
I think we just have to make sure that we are mindful of that it is it's a community space, but it's also a place where it's a section office. And I'm not going to speak for RPD and how they operate. What I tell my what we talk about, we build it and we repair it, we fix it when it's broken, and we listen to what our customers ask for, and our customers here are RPD, and they have certain things that they have to have in place so that they can do their jobs. And if we can have that cherry on the top by providing some opportunities for community engagement, we do that, and that's part of everything that we do. Just like I don't know if you're here earlier when we talked about how we, as just a normal way of us doing business, we put in these sustainable elements in everything that we do. So we try to make sure that we provide opportunities to keep things open for people of the community to come in and be part of this thing in the community, this new thing. But we also have to be mindful that the police officers are there, and sometimes they're doing a job that's probably not the most pleasant job. So we have to be able to balance that. But that's going to be that question is going to have to be taken up with RPD on how they balance that. We'll build it. We'll build it. We'll do an excellent job. We'll do it on time, and we'll do it on budget. Right, Holly?
That's what you do, right?
Of course. But we do well, yeah.
I have one final question about the median. I know there was some talk about potentially altering that. Has any decisions been made?
Absolutely. We have to be able to lower that median down, because one thing that happens in Rochester, and although people don't think it happened this year, it did. We get snow, and Main Street is one of our major arterials. Anytime 490, 590 breaks down, people who are trying to get home, they go right onto East Main Street, and that's their secondary route. If we don't have a place to put snow, If we can't bank it, we're in trouble. And that's one thing that we have to do. So what we've done is it was more of a substantial medium. We've taken it down, we brought it down to an abbreviated level. So it's going to be much more appropriate for snow removal. And that's, we have to look at all the elements of what we do so that they're all in complementary to the design of each season. And if we don't look at snow as part of that design and how it impacts our design, we're asking for problems in the wintertime. So we have to make sure that's there. And that's why we had to abbreviate that and bring that median down. There'll still be a medium, but it will not be as prominent as it once was in the preliminary design.
Thank you.
Any other
Okay.
questions?
Are there any other questions on this item? If not, we'll move on to the other item on our agenda for the lead lines.
Holly and Lillian, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And next we have our team from the Waterworks, Pat O'Connor. He's our Director of Water. And Pat, are you on?
I am on. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you
Can see you
introduce your
too.
team? Can you introduce your team?
Yes, be happy to. Joining the meeting with us this afternoon is Patty Bedard. Patty is the manager of production at our Hemlock filtration plant. Also joining us is Dave Rowley. Dave is our Chief of Water Quality Operations down at the plant. Dave will be giving the presentation, and Patty, Dave, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. But we definitely appreciate the opportunity to present on this important topic.
Now, I just have to say, what are the 3 B's of, we'll talk about that later.
But I know the 3 B's.
see, I have to say that. I have to say it because these are 3 PEs. They're amazing engineers, and they're some of the brightest people that you'll find in any water system in America. And we're just so fortunate to have these folks here working for us. I mean, Patty was from the Army Civil Engineers, and she was a captain, a Notre Dame graduate. We're fortunate enough to basically get Dave from New York State Department of Health to come and work with us. And Pat's been with us for almost 30 years now.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're very fortunate to have these engineers, and they're very bright, but they'll get really technical. So I just want to make sure that we can get a lot of this stuff in the time that we have. So
I thought you were referring to Councilmember Evans' B's. Be brief, brother, be brief.
yeah, that's it.
That was it.
I share that with
Words to live by. Words to live by.
I share that with them.
All right. Who's leading off on this?
Dave Rowley will be giving the presentation.
You can begin.
Okay, everyone can hear me okay, I hope. And I think I'm sharing a screen, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for your interest in what we're doing here in Hemlock and in the distribution system up at Felix Street. I want to give you a very quick summary of where we've been with lead in drinking water, what some of our recent efforts were, and some of the things coming up on the very, very close horizon. So just to get started, I want to talk a little bit about how many lead services we actually have. We're very lucky that we have a very good digital inventory of our water services within our system. When I talk about these water services that we have, I am referring to the portion that exists from the water main to the shutoff valve. We call that the outside service. We have a very good handle on the numbers. Of the almost 61,000 services that we have, about 26,500 of them contain lead. As I go through the presentation, I'm also going to refer to the inside service. That is the portion that runs from the shutoff valve in the public right-of-way into the customer's home. It's a little vocabulary there. I do want to talk about how those services are distributed throughout the city. This is a density map. So think of the red areas. If you're in a red area, you are closer to many more lead containing services than you would be if you were in a green area. So what you can see by that is they're pretty evenly distributed throughout the city. You know, we use lead as a material for water services up to about 1920, and then other service line materials after that also utilize short pieces of lead. So we have a lot of them and they're distributed everywhere. Now, in 1991 is when EPA first began regulating lead in drinking water. The city has a proud history of being on the cutting edge of making sure that we're in compliance with the lead and copper rule, as it's referred to. What you can see in the graph from about year 2000 to 2018 is our lead test results. And the orange column represents the 90th percentile. What that simply means is 90th percentile is 90% of our samples are less than that value. So the regulation says 90% of the samples we collect have to be less than 15 parts per billion. As you can see, over the last 18 years, we have to sample every 3 years. We've always been at or below that action level. The other thing I really want to point out about this is that the action level is not health-based. There's never been a scientific study done to determine what water with lead at 15 parts per billion will do to children, adults, anybody. What it does do is it evaluates how well your corrosion treatment at your treatment plant is working to prevent those lead service lines from corroding on the inside where they're exposed to water. So we've always been in compliance with the lead and copper rule, as you can see. So in 2016, Flint happened, and it was a kind of a moment of introspection for a lot of water systems, including ours, as well as regulators. And, you know, what we did as a water bureau is we got together and thought, you know, based on the way things were handled in Flint and based on the way the industry is talking about lead now, we need to do better. So we have spent the last 4 years doing better. What have we done? Well, first thing we've done is we've updated our message. Almost every water system in the country until Flint was using the message that we're in compliance with the rule, so you are fine. And bottom line is the experts are saying there is no safe level of lead. So I cannot tell you whether or not, because our corrosion control seems to be working at a level that keeps us under 15 parts per billion, means every single person has a safe level of lead in their water. So what we wanted to do is improve the way we talk to our customers about lead, because there's a lot of things they can do to make sure they're getting the best quality water they can get. So what we've done is we've updated our website to give folks tools not only to mitigate lead in drinking water, but to find out if they have it in the first place. And the way they can do that is the website gives them the opportunity to click onto our real property website, where we've added information about whether or not an address has a lead service line. If you go to the real property website, you put in your address, you click on the water tab that comes up, you will be able to see what your service line material is. You can also contact our lab through the water test at City of Rochester email you see. We will do free lead testing for any city resident. We have actually taken steps to get certified to do lead testing in our lab, so we don't have to wait for a contract lab to do it. And lastly, we're giving folks information about how they can mitigate lead in their drinking water if they have any. And it's about simply running your water when it's been sitting for too long.
Oh, really? Wow.
So
Got more to explore.
another thing that we're doing is we wanted to do a better job of communicating risks from what happens when you disturb a lead service line during construction. Lead service lines form scales on the inside that become loose if they're disturbed. Those loosened scales can then flow into customers' homes and temporarily elevate lead levels. So we've improved the way we communicate those risks. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. And we've also developed a dedicated lead service line replacement program.
Dave, I got to stop you for 1 second.
Sure.
It's not often we get a chance to toot our own horns, and you skip by a very important little bullet point there on the real property website. You got in parentheses something about the GAO. Could you talk about that briefly, please?
Yes, Commissioner. Thank you for reminding me. I was trying to follow the 3 Bs. We have been recognized by the Government Accountability Office because of the quality of our service line inventory and its availability online. They recognized that, reached out to us and asked for all of our data so that they could use it as part of a nationwide study to determine how having that information available might promote better health outcomes. So we're very proud to be participating in that study, and we hope to hear back from them within the next few weeks on where they're at with that. Pat, was there anything you'd like to add on that?
No, I just think every opportunity we get to talk about how we are, setting a standard and doing things above and beyond, and you guys are really doing above and beyond. I don't think we should lose that opportunity to share that. And that's something when the federal government comes in and says, you guys are the gold standard in dealing with that. So I just want to be able to brag about you just a little bit. So pardon me.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, so to continue with this, another thing that we are actually leading the way on is we did a study on the impacts that construction has on lead levels in homes. And what we were really looking at is, we know pipes can release lead when they're disturbed. We wanted to know how much and how long. And what we learned is in about 3 months, it takes for lead levels to return to normal. And the amount of lead that gets released is variable depending on the type of construction being done. But we also really learned what is really effective to mitigate this. We go in, we do some work. In the long term, it's absolutely beneficial, but in the short term, we want to make sure folks can take the right steps to mitigate any elevated lead that might occur. So what we did is we did a study where we probably collected close to 1,000 samples from volunteers. And we determined that the 2 most effective ways to deal with this is, one, for folks to completely flush out the plumbing in their home when their water service gets turned back on. And that notice that you see in the center is essentially something we give to anybody whose lead service line has been disturbed, so that they can take those steps to flush out their water service. And then we also distribute filter pitchers that are rated to remove lead with 3 months supply of cartridges. We did this as a pilot program last year, and it worked quite well. And now we're doing it for all of our service line disturbances. We presented this at a state conference last year. We are the first water system in New York to be doing this. And the importance of it will come in a little bit when I talk about the new lead rules that are coming from EPA. So we're very proud of this program, and we're proud of the study that we did to show what we can do to help folks mitigate lead in their homes. Another thing that the Water Bureau has done is we've implemented a program for lead service line replacement, dedicated lead service line replacement. Now, in the past, we've always replaced lead service lines when we were putting in new water mains. For over 40 years, we've been doing it. And from 2006 to 2016, we replaced about 3,000 of them. So it's certainly not something that we haven't had on our radar and we haven't been doing. But now we're actually using CIP money in dedicated programs that are strictly lead service line replacement programs. We're not waiting for water mains to be replaced. And so far, we've been able to do about 500 to 600 replacements per year. We've got a couple of grants from New York State, around $1 million worth, and our CIP does now incorporate dedicated lead service line replacement projects in it. So we're making an effort to start that process of getting the lead out. I do want to point out, if you replaced all the lead service line in today's dollars, on the public side only, that outside service, it's about $120 million. So it's a very daunting task if we were to take on replacing all of them. So those are the things that we've been doing in the last few years. Last year in November, EPA published the new lead and copper rule. And essentially what it does is it revamps entirely the way water systems have to comply with corrosion control and with lead service lines in their water systems. Now, as soon as it came out, I did a very deep dive into the rule and realized that it's arguably more complicated than the entire rest of the Safe Drinking Water Act. That table that you see is a very brief one-page Cliff Notes summary that you're not going to be able to read, but I'm going to go through what it really talks about. That is how this rule will impact Water Bureau operations, the things that we do. There are things in the rule that require us to inventory our lead service lines, not only in the public right of way, the outside line, but the inside service line that on private property. There's a new trigger level. I talked about an action level of 15 parts per billion earlier. They've ratcheted down the corrosion control requirements by including a trigger level. The requirements for testing lead in drinking water have been ratcheted up dramatically with the rule. There are issues with lead service line replacement that essentially say that if we don't get customers to replace the private side portion of the service line when we do a replacement, that it doesn't count as a full lead service line replacement. And there are requirements to test lead not only in schools, which you already have in New York, but at all registered daycare facilities, which also represents a dramatic amount of testing increase. So how does this impact the Water Bureau? Well, like I alluded to, the Safe Drinking Water Act is a pretty complicated regulation. This regulation in and of itself has more tracking and reporting requirements than all the rest of the Safe Drinking Water Act combined. This is just a little smattering of some of the things we'll have to track and report to the health department to ensure that we're in compliance. You'll notice filter pitchers on there. The new rule now requires that anytime you disturb or replace a lead service that you distribute filter pitchers. So we are ahead of the curve, ahead of the rule, if you will. So I'm very proud of that fact. We're going to have to identify the 35,000 inside service line materials that we don't know what they are. And that inside, again, is from the shut-off valve into the home. We don't have good records on those. We have to develop a lead service line replacement program by 2023 that includes ways we can get the customers to participate in replacing their portion or the private side inside portion of the service, which is challenging because of getting people to spend the money or getting permission to do the work. So it'll be very challenging. And we also will be required to replace lead service lines whenever customers replace their portion. So if a customer has a leak on the part on their property and they replace theirs, we are then required to replace what's on the public side. That could have implications for the city's one dig policy. Now, 10 parts per billion is what's called the new trigger level. What does that mean? They're establishing a secondary limit that will require anybody who's over 10 parts per billion to do an entire corrosion control study and install new treatment. We know, based on a statistical evaluation of all the lead testing we've done over the last 4 years, that we will exceed the trigger level. There's no question in my mind. So we know we're going to have to do a corrosion control study and we're going to have to install new treatment. Lastly, from an impact standpoint, our testing volume increase, when you read the rule and really look at it, we're looking at a 1,500% increase in the number of amount of testing that we're going to have to do. It equates to a workload of probably 2,000 staff hours additional on top of what we do now. We do about 300 a year now, and this is looking at going to closer to 5,000 a year. So now, we have formed a task force because we recognized quickly that the rule was very complicated and we were going to need every minute we could get to make sure we're in compliance when it kicks in. So far, we have reviewed the rule, we've reported the potential impacts on Water Bureau operations, and we drafted a comment letter that's been sent to EPA as part of their public comment period for the rule. The rule is not finalized yet. That would be the next step once they review all the comments. We've also been tasked as a task force to develop an implementation plan for how we're going to be in compliance in 2023 when the rule takes effect, which means we need to figure out how we're going to count 35,000 services and figure out what they're made of. We're going to actually start a corrosion control study now. We're in the process of starting it. And we also need to reach out to other city departments because some of the requirements of the rule are going to impact folks besides us here in the Water Bureau. So this is going to be a lot of work, and we're a lot of folks are going to be hearing from us soon on how this is going to impact their particular departments. One other thing that the new rule does is it actually impacts the decision-making process for LT2 compliance at Cobbs Hill and Highland reservoirs. How does it do that? Well, the new rule is written to very, very strongly favor a corrosion control chemical called orthophosphate. Orthophosphate is great for corrosion control.
Dave,
Yes.
could you just briefly talk about LT2 and what is it and why is it important now? Okay.
Yes. LT2 is the surface water treatment rule that requires us to either cover our storage in the city or install treatment that can handle an organism called Cryptosporidium. The current bilateral compliance agreement that we are under with the state health department has us coming into compliance at Highland by 2023 and Cobbs Hill in 2024. So the bottom line with LT2 is we either have to decide, are we going to provide covered storage for the city or are we going to put ultraviolet light disinfection in? And that is where we're at with those projects. In fact, I think we gave an update on the Highland project in October to City Council at a work session meeting. So that happened in October, and then this rule got published in November. So was that sufficient explanation, Commissioner?
Yes, that was good.
Okay, thank you. So orthophosphate is great for corrosion control. However, phosphorus and orthophosphate are wonderful, wonderful fertilizers. So what that means is in an open reservoir, phosphorus and orthophosphate will dramatically promote the growth of algae. We don't get a lot of algae in our reservoirs now because Hemlock Lake doesn't really have any phosphorus in it. If we start to add it, we will immediately see dramatic water quality consequences at both reservoirs if they remain open to the atmosphere and to sunlight. So if we were required by the new rule to install orthophosphate, it would eliminate open reservoirs with an LT2 solution. It just wouldn't be compatible. Now, the other problem with all this is we have conflicting deadlines. Again, LT2 is that 2023 and 2024. And we need to make decisions on what we're going to do with those reservoirs well before the deadlines because we have to design projects, put them out to bid, and then construct them. We will not have answers on the required corrosion control treatment in time to make decisions about how to properly implement LT2. The lead and copper rule revisions take effect in 2023. Any quality corrosion control study will take at least 2 years to complete. And then you still need to give the health department time to approve it. So the other issue is the CIP as it stands now is not adequate to fund a covered storage solution for Highland and Cobbs. Right now we're looking at, when you combine the cost for UV at Cobbs and Highland, which have been the options that were selected a few years ago, you're looking at $30 to $35 million for the two of them. Redundant covered storage in one form or another, depending how it's done, could cost anywhere from $60 to $90 million. So we don't have that in the CIP budget to do it. So this is a, I guess it's, I'm going to call it a chicken and egg scenario because I'm not sure which should come first, but you know, we certainly have a conflict. And what we have done is recognizing this conflict, we've reached out to the Department of Health And what we have suggested to them is we've dipped our toe in the water to get their sense of whether or not they think that extending the bilateral compliance agreement might be possible so that we can do things correctly and not spend money on the reservoirs and then find out we spent it poorly. So one proposal we had for them was, how about we extend the bilateral compliance agreement out very long term, 20 to 25 years, and take that capital money and remove all of our lead service lines instead. Now, in my opinion, there's far better public health benefit to getting all of our lead service lines out than there is to resolving the issue of LT2 at the reservoirs. However, if the health department's not really excited about going out that far with LT2, we would at least like a short-term extension so we can figure out what we're going to do for corrosion control treatment before we have to make a decision on how we're going to comply with LT2. We would also ask for an extension on the current grant for Highland Reservoir. So we have actually met with the health department on February 26th. We gave them an overview of all the issues and showed them how these are conflicting. And then we sent them a summary of all the issues on March 6th. Now, a week later, we all know what happened. The pandemic kind of struck. I did reach back out to them last week, and they hope to get back to us in a couple weeks to at least give us a sense of what direction they might be willing to go. So I'm going to be cautiously optimistic that they're willing to work with us to come up with a solution for both our lead and copper rule issues as well as the reservoirs. Now, as a final note, there are cities that are doing complete lead service line replacement programs, and I'm going to highlight Denver, Colorado, because they kind of gave us the idea of saying, hey, how about instead of putting in orthophosphate, how about we just replace all of our lead service lines? They have an agreement with EPA and their state health department to do exactly that. They have anywhere from 64 to 80,000 lead service lines, and they have a 15-year replacement commitment with EPA and their state health department to do it. So it's being done. It can be done, but it's a big commitment. So with that, I will defer to anyone else who wants to add, Pat or Commissioner or Patty, if I missed anything.
I just want to toss in a comment, Councilman Patterson. You know, as you're contemplating these things there, Norm and everybody, I only speak for myself, but I certainly would like to see those lead lines replaced. So as we're working that out, if we've got options, I think that needs to be option A.
Councilperson Patterson, we agree. We think that's the best option. And we think that will give us the biggest bang for our buck, and that will give us the best opportunity. And I just wanted Patty to just briefly talk about that and how that will impact the plant operations, which is so important, and how we provide 37 million gallons of water every day to our citizenry, and how we have the best way tasting water in New York State, and how we don't want to lose that. Patty?
Right. I think the lead service lines.
Councilmember Vice President Lightfoot.
Yes, thank you, President Scott. I want to thank each and every one of you for this presentation. I was the one that asked for this particular work session. I've been trying to get it for quite some time due to having a few constituents that had concern. You guys know, thank you, Commissioner Jones, for taking us out to the water treatment facility. That was one of the highlights of my early coming into City Council. I really enjoyed it, and I'm a fan of you guys. I just want y'all to understand that first and foremost. Please don't take my comments in a negative way, but I'm just asking them because these are some concerns that I've been addressed with some of our citizens. And so the first one was like, when did the website, because I know in 2016 there were some changes. When did the website get updated?
Pat, do you recall exactly when we updated it? I think it was in late 2017 or early 2018.
Yes, we worked with our IT department to get that online. So I believe it was 2017.
Okay, so my thing is more importantly, because I too agree with Councilman Patterson that the lead replacement is the #1 concern. And I understand that, and I've talked to Commissioner Jones about this. I've gotten a lot of insight on the difference between the house and the nipple and the different pieces of all of this is very complicated. And I understand we just don't have the money to maybe do what Denver's doing or other people are doing. However, I'd like to get a list of where the replacements have been done in the last, let's say couple of years. And I understand that the way that they're replacing new nipples, if you will, is when there is work that is being done on that street or in that area. And I would just offer for consideration, if that's true, that we look at where, because oftentimes where the work is happening is not in the 146, the areas that are underserved. And so in those areas that are underserved tend to be the areas that have the older housing stock. And so with that being said, I would like for us to consider, if I'm correct in how they're getting replaced, that we consider looking at replacing areas in our older housing stock as opposed to areas that are getting construction. Because we know oftentimes, areas that have those, the zip codes that would consider the crescent, if you will, often are the areas where they're getting construction sometimes. So that's something I just want to point out. And as well as the marketing piece, because I know, and many of the council members who are listening, correct me if I'm wrong, how many of you know that you could call and get your lead tested? How many of you knew that you could call and get a pitcher that would help you cipher out the lead from your water? I mean, how many people actually knew that that was even an option? Even our council members, this may have been new information for. So we can probably do a better job of getting this information out to the public. I know of people who've also called and you'll come in and test the lead in their home for free. How many people know that? And how can we do better to get out that information to the public? Because as you said, there is no safe level of lead. So we may have the best tasting water, but we're drinking it out of a golden goblet. We don't drink poison out of a golden goblet. You understand what I'm saying? So, just because it tastes good don't mean it is good, So, I want us to think about how can we educate the community better, methods that we can, so that they know how they can access these tools and these resources, and so people can know that they have this available, so they can take away maybe some of their fears of what's going on, and also be educated around this whole lead thing. But I think we're heading in the right direction, clearly, based on your presentation, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm just advocating for more education to the community.
Councilperson Lightfoot, we're on the same page with you. That's why I've been an advocate of increasing our expenditures from our CIP allocations. 3 years ago, we were only spending $300,000 a year on lead service replacements, and now we're spending $1 million a year. We've gone to New York State DEC, New York State Health Department. We received multiple grants to assist us on that. And we think it's one of the more positive things that we can do for community health is replace those services. And if you heard part of the presentation, currently we used to wait until we did a street reconstruction project to replace lead service lines. Now we don't do that. We go and replace them on a need basis. So we do have that flexibility. But the other part of that presentation, to do all the lead service lines in one fell swoop, it's $120 million. And that's something that we're looking at. We're looking at ways in which we can accommodate that and get that done. But it's gonna take some thought, and it also is gonna take some time, because if we had $120 million today, it would take us 5 years to actually replace. 5 to 7 years. Pat, am I overcommitting?
If we had yeah, it would be difficult to do. I mean, we have to coordinate with street projects. We don't want to be going into a street a year or two after it's been rehabilitated. So it requires a lot of coordination and
I always make commitments for Pat. He has to fulfill. So
the follow-up, Commissioner, excuse me, the follow-up would be, it's interesting you said, okay, you're not replacing them where the construction is, you're going where on a need basis.
Right.
Well, they all need to be replaced.
Absolutely.
Good or bad, right? So
Absolutely.
what is the plan, I guess, for how they're going to be replaced from now into the future? What is that plan?
Right now, that's fluid because of the things that were laid out in the presentation. We're dealing with two big items out there. One is the LT2 requirement and the funds that we have allocated to basically be in compliance with LT2 by 2023. And the other is the new lead and copper rule. Those things have an impact on how we plan and how we move forward. What we are moving forward with our plans for this summer. We did complete 500 service lines last summer, and we'll be doing more service lines this summer. And there's a plan. We look at how we can best, get the best bang for our buck. We can't hopscotch around the city. We have to do them in different sections. And we will share with you where we're going to be at this summer with the lead service line replacements. Is that something that's available, Pat?
yes.
Okay, so we'll share with you our plan for this summer, and then we'll talk about future plans.
I also like to see some type of, if you would please share your marketing plan for how you're going to get this information on the tools and the resources that we have for residents, how we get that to them.
Okay,
please.
And I believe what we've done, to many residents, this information is basically a stocking stuffer in your water bill. We send that out. It's on our websites. We go to the state fair. We go to the public market. When we're doing our taste tests at the county fair in different areas in the state fair, we have all this information available. There's this whole a variety of information that we provide to individuals and anyone at any time, and that they can have it.
Yes,
so,
we also work with our communications bureau as well.
I just want to point one detail out, and Pat, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe we stopped installing lead services around 1920.
In the 20s.
In the 20s. Yeah. So if we're replacing a lead service line, it's a good chance it's been there almost 100 years or more. So it stands to reason that house is probably relatively old too. Now, I'm not suggesting that we don't need to make sure we're trying to target the highest need, but it's kind of inherent in the process, because the reason they use lead is it's amazing. When they take it out of the ground, it looks like the day that it went in. So it lasts. It's just not good for you.
Commissioner, you might want to double check about the distribution of information about those tools and services that we have, because I don't recall getting that at at Maplewood Festival, where they have our water, and some of the other places. You might want to just double check on that.
I have a question. I hate to be the person that asked this. I'm sorry, but I do have constituents that ask this. Concerning fluoride usage, can anyone speak to that, whether it's conspiracy, just so I can answer it for people and just debunk it and be done with it, please?
Well, to me, it's a conspiracy theory without really any good. To me, it's no different than anti-vaccine folks. So,
Commissioner Jones, you're muted. Unmute your button. There you go.
We've Councilperson Peel. We have folks that would go to our reservoir and they would do certain things to send out propaganda on fluoride, and it's something that's really I think it's unfounded. And Patty, you want to talk about that briefly? What you're doing with fluoride?
So fluoride has been added to the city's drinking water system since the mid 1950s. And it was granted by the Department of Health. And it's been continuous since that time. If you ask folks in the dental community, you will see that they are behind that addition of this product to the drinking water. We have, in the past few years, we received a grant to upgrade our system. So we have a brand new fluoride system. It's a liquid product that we put into the water at the Hemlock treatment plant, and it goes through the system and it stays to the end of the distribution system. So it's very fine tuned. So it's very precise. So, and it's very accurate.
I appreciate all the work.
I would add to that.
Oh, right.
I apologize, but there have been studies done looking at Medicaid dollars towards dental costs. And communities that fluoridate have lower Medicaid dental cost burdens than those that don't. And it's even more important fluoridation in communities that are lesser advantaged, such as ours, because for some kids, it's the only way they get some fluoride in their mouth, and it's important to help prevent those dental problems. So.
Excellent point. Thank you very much. I want to say thank you very much, because when I was in the military 20 years ago, I loved coming back home for a nice cold glass of water, because I was in Texas and they had yellow water that came out of the faucet. It was the worst. So all I want to do is come home, nice cup of cold water. You guys do an excellent job. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I could just add one,
go ahead.
If I can just add one closing thought to this task that's ahead of, I don't consider it a water problem or a situation. It's an entire city situation. And to the Councilman Lightfoot's points before, we need to be creative in our solutions. We need to have communication. And I ask for all of the council staff to help with getting the word out about our tools, because we could use that help. There are some communities that are very creative in their funding solutions. And I think our program will continue to evolve and look for those funding efforts. One that's being done in one community is, as soon as a household changes hands, as it's sold, the lead service line has to be replaced. And that's written into the codes. So we will be coming back to you and looking at the legislation tools that are out there that can help us handle this problem. And it takes, innovation, creation, all of us working together, and we will get all those lead services, because we know that's a health risk and we're going to get them. So I thank you. Dave, you did a great job.
Thank you. I'll add to that real quickly. Any of your constituents, if they have concerns, they can send that email. They can call us. When we get a request for a lead test kit, we drop the kit off the next day. And then we analyze that test and have results back to them by the following Friday, along with a very good explanation of what it all means. So, and one thing that we do is we do 3 samples. They actually take their first draw, and then they let the water run for 2 minutes, take that, and then they run 5 minutes, because it demonstrates how easy it is to drop lead levels in your water just by letting your water run. So it's educational. We've done hundreds of those flush samples, and they always come out low. And it's such an easy way for folks to protect themselves if they know what to do to protect themselves.
And what's the number for someone to ask for a testing to be done?
428-6680 extension 3, or they can send an email to watertest@cityofrochester.gov. That email goes directly to me and all of my lab staff. And my lab staff are the best lab staff in the state. They are amazing people, and they'll take care of it.
Watertest@cityofrochester.gov.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any additional questions or comments on this subject?
Yes, Councilman Patterson. It is my sincere hope that you will send us over that sample legislation regarding replacing the lead lines anytime property changes hands. I think that's one of the one of the easiest ways for us to get ahead of this process and getting this done. In addition, you also made a comment that lead lines stopped being installed in the city of Rochester in the 20s. So I was hoping that you could disaggregate out how many houses we have. I mean, is it really 25,000 houses with lead lines that were built, let's say, before 1930? Is that what we're looking at? Or does that include some houses that have lead lines also that were built after, I guess 1930?
Councilman Lightfoot, that may include a small amount of houses built after 1930, but the primary amount would be those built before 1930.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, but
Councilmember Patterson.
yeah. Well, if you could, but again, you're saying we're looking at 25,000 houses, 25,000 houses roughly. You should be able to, I would hope you would be able to disaggregate that out and say, okay, well, we know that, for example, there's a house that was built after 1950. Should we believe that a house built after 1950 doesn't have a lead service line, or it does?
Councilmember Patterson, you're talking about the inside portion of the service where there's a number of.
I'm talking about, well, particularly and specifically the part that the city is replacing, the city is responsible for now. The inside line, I understand what you were saying. You guys don't know what those are made out of because I guess that wasn't your responsibility when those are being put in. So initially, the part from the main to the shutoff, that's what we're really talking about. What is the time frame on those?
Yeah, there wouldn't be many at all from, say, 1950.
Okay.
Back then, it was mostly copper put in then,
Okay.
maybe some galvanized as well.
Okay.
But we have that information.
Yes.
We can look into that.
Sure.
I just in closing, I just want to offer the new council person the opportunity to come out and visit us at the filtration plant. It's a great trip. You'll learn a lot about our system. We did that with the council folks that came in I think 2 years ago, and I thought it was worthwhile, and it gives you a chance to basically see the thought that went into this filtration system and our watershed that occurred over 140 years ago, and why it's still relevant today. So I just want to give that an offer to you. When this COVID-19 subsides, we can go out there. We can show you what the water filtration plant and what we do out there.
I've been twice. It's a good trip. Good experience.
I think it's one of the best trips. I agree. I think it's one of the best things we have done, and I think we spent almost the whole day there, and it was excellent.
I want in on that, Commissioner Jones.
Absolutely.
Can I ride shotgun if I come, Commissioner?
I don't know about you, BJ. Yeah,
I'll pick the tunes.
Absolutely.
Oh, well, can I say this? Just because
Certainly.
we are live and the public is listening, you, of course, after COVID, of course, but you guys do tours, right, for the public?
We have schools, we have scout groups, we have people come out there. It's just an amazing resource that we have. And you'll see.
So if the public commissioner, what number would the public call, of course, after COVID, that they would call, if they want a school or whomever if they wanted to set up a tour, who would they contact you?
David?
They can call the plant directly at 428-6680. And if they forget that number, they can always call our water dispatch number at 7500. But yes, we do give tours, and we're very proud to show off this system. And we think that this system is not our system, it's the city's system. The city water drinkers have paid into this system for 140 plus years. So it's everybody's system that drinks the water. We're just the stewards of it for a short period of time in history. So all are welcome to come after this passes. when it's safe.
Yeah, I think that concludes our session for today. Unless there is some closing thoughts or pearls of wisdom somebody wants to share, I would say that we are finished.
Okay, thank you.